In tonight's news, a major new transport training centre to be operating in the southeast this year, Australian National under fire over the Blue Lake train service, Tatiara businesses move to halt the economic decline of their district, and a Mount Gambier man finds out that you can't trust anyone these days. Tomorrow we can expect a shower or two with an estimated top of 23 degrees for Mount Gambier, 28 for Keith and 26 degrees for Narracourt. I'll be back shortly with those stories and more in tonight's regional news.
A secret about Sunraysia 100% natural prune juice. Mandy's a high flyer. Melbourne one day, New York the next. With her hectic international lifestyle, she drinks Sunraysia 100% natural prune juice, hot or cold, to keep her vital and on the go. Endorsed by the National Heart Foundation as a heart food, Sunraysia 100% natural prune juice. With dietary fibre, calcium, iron, potassium, and the secret for the high flyer in everyone.
A major new initiative in transport training will begin in the southeast this year. A specially dedicated transport training centre is to be established in Mount Gambier at a cost of nearly $200,000 and will be operating by mid-year. Andrew O'Connor has more.
Mount Gambier is one of Australia's biggest trucking centres. Apart from the giant Scott and K&S Freighters trucking networks, it's also home to other transport businesses, ranging from logging contractors to furniture removalists. It was the intensity of transport activity in Mount Gambier that led to the Road Transport Training Skills Centre to push for the establishment of a dedicated transport training facility. And with industry and government support, that project is now set to proceed.
Currently, in the initial stages of planning the building of the shed, together with our friends at the TAFE College on Wallace Road. They're very receptive to having the building out there, and we're going ahead with all confidence.
Much of that confidence comes from the knowledge that the project is on a sound financial footing, thanks to strong industry and government support.
We've been very fortunate in obtaining $100,000 from, made up of $50,000 from the state government and $50,000 from the Commonwealth government, together with some $78,000 by local support from the transport and allied industries.
The new centre will provide all-weather training facilities where drivers and operators will be able to undertake various courses. These will range from instruction on driving forklifts to learning how to safely transport dangerous goods, one of the truck driver's most important responsibilities.
Dangerous goods is one that is always a real problem in the industry should any incidents happen. So we want to make sure that our drivers in South East are fully trained and all that sort of thing.
Mr Allen is confident there will be a strong demand for skills training when the centre opens in June of this year.
Australian National has come under fire for its decision to axe stewardess service of the Blue Lake train service. A leading Liberal politician says the move is part of AN's long-term plan to abolish the service.
For more than a decade, the South East passenger train service has been threatened with extinction. Poor patronage and the resulting financial losses have meant the future of the service has been under question. But while there's always been concern about the service's viability, it's only in the past 18 months that the possibility of the service being discontinued has become very real. Although AN has strenuously denied claims it's planning to halt passenger services to the southeast, speculation on the issue continues. That speculation has been fueled by AN's decision to axe stewardesses from the service. That decision was strongly criticised by the Liberal member for Mount Gambier, Mr Harold Allison, earlier today. He says it is a forerunner to the service being shut down completely. However, he says there are other, more serious issues that must be addressed. With the Blue Lake passenger carriages reaching the end of their useful lives, Mr Allison says AN must consider replacing the ageing cars. He says that while AN contends the patronage doesn't justify the expenditure, people cannot be expected to travel in substandard conditions. Mr Allison has called on AN to meet with the state government on the issue to see if it would be possible for former Metropolitan rail cars to be converted for country service.
Traders from both Keith and Bordertown, as well as both towns' economic groups, met last night at Bordertown. The meeting held at the Tatiara District Council was to discuss the alarming decrease of business within the district.
Since the construction of the Dukes Highway overpass in 1987, traders say there's been a reduction in business within the area. This has resulted in a loss of income for many businesses, and some have been forced to sell up. Local business groups, including the Keith Economic Group and the Bordertown Development Organisation, met with retail traders last night to try and find a solution.
Well, I think we need to take a positive attitude, try and identify some of the problems, and then plan strategies to overcome those problems.
Mr Winter said the aim of the meeting was to encourage people to shop locally and entice travellers on the highway to visit border towns. Mr Winter said a number of suggestions were made at the meeting. These included placing billboards on the highway, new themes for the towns, a clean-up and tree planting project, and improved car parking facilities.
The border town group in particular would like to brighten up the image of the town and try and promote a more attractive image to attract people into the town.
Mr Winter said the meeting has cleared up a few problems, but action won't be taken until the next meeting in May.
When you're suffering from a life-threatening medical condition, the last thing you expect is for people to rip you off. But one Mount Gambier man has learnt the hard way that there is some truth in the old saying, you can't trust anybody these days. Andrew O'Connor explains.
For Mr John Stafford, this small flat is his world. A severe heart condition means he spends 85% of his time in bed, venturing out of this room only infrequently to make a midday meal.
Mr Stafford's severe medical condition makes it virtually impossible for him to answer the door. As a result, he simply leaves the door open with an explanatory note attached. He never thought anyone would take advantage of his ill health for their own personal gain.
But a male youth apparently had other ideas. He entered the home on one occasion, claiming to be looking for a friend. He later appeared a second time and again spoke with Mr Stafford, but this time when he left, he took a hand-turned wooden bowl containing a small sum of money. Even now, Mr Stafford can't understand the young man's actions.
I feel it is quite, well, I don't know, the words really fail you to think that they will take such advantage, especially when he come the day before and ask about it, and I explained.
Mr Stafford concedes that by leaving his door open, he could be inviting trouble.
Yes, but then how am I going to answer the door? There's no other way.
Although the money has not been recovered, Mr Stafford did have some luck. The bowl, which was of great sentimental value, was found in a nearby bush and is now back in Mr Stafford's home.
Coonawarra vignerons prepare for the 1990 vintage. The South Australian Local Government Association joins the fight for road funding. Narracourt students work to cut down road fatalities in the region, and tourist numbers at Lady Nelson Park on the increase. Those stories and more are coming up after this break.
We've searched Australia all over to come up with this very special album, Our Land Australia.
Try to understand this land Australia. Why don't you take a best mate and sail on aboard?
14 all-Australian tracks from the cream of Australia's country talent.
Cattle in the curry are the best we ever knew. In the palm of his hand.
It's Our Land Australia. Stake a claim now.
Coonawarra Vintage, although not quite underway, is looking hopeful. Vintage for sparkling wines is to start this week, but the main contingent of grapes in the Coonawarra won't be harvested for at least 3 weeks. Leith Mulligan has the story.
Chairman of the Viticultural Council in the southeast, Mr Ian Hollick from Coonawarra, says the lead-up to the vintage has been dry, but with no adverse effects on the grapes.
We've had a very dry season, haven't had any rain to speak of since back in October. Other than that, though, things have been pretty good.
He says vignerons in Coonawarra have been fairly happy with the yield so far, and there have been no major problems.
No disease problems. We have had a fair bit of humidity, and there was some very slight outbreaks of downy mildew earlier in the season, but they seem to be kept under control by the spray programs used. So, no, everything looks very good at the moment.
Mr Hollick says sparkling-based wines such as Chardonnay and Pinot Noir will be harvested within the next week, but table wines won't be touched until at least 3 weeks from now.
Do you think it's likely to be a good vintage this year?
I would think there's every indication at this stage that should be one of the, perhaps not the best, hard to say that at this stage, but a very good one.
The South Australian State Government has lifted a veil of secrecy in an attempt to head off claims of bungling over the proposed marine land development. More than 1,000 pages of documents have been tabled in Parliament, and all parties can now talk openly.
While the persistent marine land protesters kept a vigil outside Parliament, Industry Minister Lynn Arnold was attempting to smooth the political waters inside by tabling more than 1,000 pages of government documents. They all related to the marine land redevelopment, and most were previously confidential. The documents detail 4 years of complicated legal and financial dealings over the proposed marine land redevelopment. It's a weighty collection, and of course it's a saga which has imposed a weighty burden of at least $5 million on the state government. The opposition has been highly critical of the government's handling of the project and has promised with the Democrats to establish a select committee through the upper house to look into the matter. The Liberals say the government has gone public now only to try and avoid a select committee inquiry.
Government can see the writing on the wall. They can see that the Democrats and the Liberals are going to force them into a position where they've got to bring out everything into the open. They've tried to kill it off. Hasn't succeeded, though.
Mr Arnold says the government has nothing to fear from such scrutiny.
We're now saying, OK, here's all the information there, all members of another place, have a close look at it. If you feel at the end of that you still wish to vote for a select committee, OK, that's fine. That'll be a decision of that place, and the government will cooperate with that select committee. But we believe there is enough information in there that will answer the questions that people have been asking.
Despite this attempt to free up public debate, it now seems certain a parliamentary inquiry will be established.
The South Australian Local Government Association has launched a major campaign to win increased road funding. The LGA plans to pressure the federal government in the lead-up to the March election.
The campaign was launched this week by the association president, Councillor Malcolm Germain, who says it's vital the government returns more funds to roadworks. Councillor Germain says people are horrified to find that they're being taxed 22 cents on every litre of fuel, with just 5 cents being returned to roads. The LGA has demanded the government allocate at least 2 cents of the existing tax to road funding, the same figure demanded by automobile associations around Australia. The LGA has urged people throughout the state to write to federal candidates, demanding action on the issue. An information kit on road funding will be distributed to councils, with the metropolitan launch of the campaign scheduled for tomorrow.
2 students at the Narracourt High School are helping to cut down the number of road fatalities. They plan to upgrade signs located on the outskirts of Narracourt, warning of the dangers of driving on roads. Leith Mulligan has more.
The signs were situated either end of Narracourt on the main road. They feature a mock class photo in which faces of the supposed fatalities are crossed out. The signs were erected 10 years ago by students of the Narracourt High School, but they have deteriorated over that time.
The signs have deteriorated over the years. The council have indicated they'd like them to come down. However, Gladys McTurnan and a couple of other people in town have thought they should remain there. So Gladys has approached the high school to have them redone and replaced. And luckily I've got 2 keen volunteers who've been out to pull them down and now looking forward to paint them.
The 2 students from the school will be doing a number of things to the signs to restore them and get them back onto the side of the road.
Pulling them down, painting them, repainting them, just giving them a general facelift and putting them back up.
Student councillor at Narracourt High, Mark Hazelworth, says the project will remind students of the dangers of driving on roads.
It's important to protect your life, and these signs are a good way of doing that.
And the students feel the same about children being killed in car accidents.
And how do you feel about the deaths on the roads? Do you think these signs will make people more aware?
Yeah, it should. Just make the public more aware of the dangers on the road.
The Department of Agriculture has warned wool producers to pay extra attention to clip preparation standards or face severe financial penalties at auction. This follows what the department believes is a general crackdown on wool standards.
Australian Wool Corporation stockpiles stand just short of 2 million bales, with experts predicting that to increase substantially in the face of general industry overproduction. At several recent sales, bales, including some stained wool, were removed from the floor without attracting a bid from the corporation. According to the Department of Agriculture, producers must take note of that trend.
So what graziers who are shearing in the next few months have got to make sure is that they prepare their wool according to the code of practice and make doubly sure that they keep out every possible vestige of stain out of their clip. They also make sure that to attract the premium bid from the Wool Corporation on their wools, that they get all their lines additionally measured.
The department expects the current trend to continue, as the corporation tries to minimise the bales it has to buy and the cost of purchasing those bales. But it believes producers needn't generally worry.
Producers who bring in their wool that's prepared correctly as according to the code of practice and has had all stones removed and is additionally measured, they're going to attract a premium price from the corporation, if not from the trade, and the trade will take their wool quite happily prepared to those standards.
Mount Gambier's tourism flagship, Lady Nelson Park, experienced a significant jump in the number of tourists visiting the centre. Figures released by the Tourist Information Centre today show that visitor numbers for January were more than 2,000 up on the same period last year.
Victoria provided the highest number of interstate visitors, with nearly 1,000 Victorians visiting the Lady Nelson during last month. South Australians were next in line with 761 people, well ahead of New South Wales with 384. Among the overseas visitors for the month were 111 people from England, with 78 Swiss nationals being the next highest number. According to the park's Senior Information Officer, Mrs. Vivian Hutchison, the figures show tourist numbers have increased significantly over last year.
Many popular sedatives have been temporarily withdrawn from Australian supermarkets and health food stores after a suspected link to deaths overseas.
In health food stores and pharmacies, something new for insomniacs to lose sleep over. Missing from the shelves, about 50 brands of sedatives and relaxants containing L-tryptophan. Among them, Bioglan, Blackmore's and Sol's L-tryptophan, Vitaplex Trypto Sleep, Vitaglow Nature Rest and Sedatol.
It's a naturally occurring preparation and as such it's got quite a popular following.
The problem with L-tryptophan, its suspected link with an outbreak overseas of EMS, a condition causing aches, pains, fever and in 9 instances, death. There's been no such outbreak from the brands produced and sold in this country. Health authorities say the recall is a precautionary measure and hope investigations overseas will blame the deaths not on the drug itself, but on a contaminant.
It may not be the tryptophan, it may be something else. It's the Perrier story all over again, I guess.
And to that story, a postscript. Most of the local Perrier water found to be contaminated with benzene had been supplied not to stores, but to restaurants. That recall continues.
And now taking a look at sport, it's over to Andrew.
Thanks, Carolyn. Good evening. The Adelaide 36ers prepare for the 1990 basketball season. Korfballers put through their paces in Mount Gambier at the weekend, and the Bordertown Football Club scores a recruiting coup. We'll return with those stories in just a moment.
Can Thunderbirds and Captain Scarlet save the world? Find out when London's Mime Theatre project brings to life on stage Thunderbirds FAB. This hilarious tribute to the cult TV series features characters like Lady Penelope,
International Wrestling,
Thunderbirds 1 and 2, Scott and Virgil,
FAB,
Brains.
This is top-level stuff.
And many more. It's the funniest show on 4 legs. Thunderbirds FAB is coming to a theatre near you. Don't miss it. FAB.
That's it.
Aggression will take on far more significance when the Adelaide 36ers hit the boards this season. New coach Don Shipway has worked the team hard over the past month, both at the gym and on the track.
With the first NBL game only 6 weeks away, Coach Don Shipway's had the team working out since January. He's trying to build a stronger squad for a more aggressive game style this season, and he's happy with the way they're shaping up.
But I think the attitude is good. They're working hard. We haven't done a lot of work on the court. We've just started in the last week, I guess, to do a little bit. But from next week, we're onto the court 4 times a week and 5 times a week. So the improvement from the court and the ball handling should be quite substantial.
All NBL teams head to Perth in 2 weeks for the Kmart Classic Series, and the on-court skills of the 36ers are being carefully honed, while the 4 new additions are settling in well.
Dan Clausen, Dan was an original member of the 36ers. He's been to Perth and to Brisbane. Well, he's back now as a backup for Brad Keith. Simon Cottrell from Canberra is with us. Matthew Reese is a local lad back from the Institute, and of course Tom Schaefer is our new import.
Shipway's game plan calls for stronger defence and more aggression, and the tough training will help.
Just to make us a little stronger, so people don't push us around quite as much as they have in the past.
The new and expanding sport of Korfball went on public display in Mount Gambier at the weekend. A series of matches were played at Holland Park, with Adelaide and Green Triangle teams competing. Among the players competing in the competition on Sunday were junior korfballers from Millicent, senior players from throughout the region, as well as visiting players from Adelaide. The Adelaide-based team Arista eventually played off in the final against the senior Green Triangle team. Sunday's competition was part of the preparations for the National Outdoor Korfball Championships to be held in Mount Gambier next month. The national competition is expected to attract 14 teams from both South Australia and Victoria. Organisers of Sunday's competition say the Adelaide korfballers were particularly impressed with the playing surface at Holland Park and are looking forward to the championships on March the 10th and 11th. The Bordertown Football Club has scored a prize recruit. Ruckman Neil Hine has signed with the club while he's farming in the district. The 199-centimetre Hine has rucked for both Norwood and the Brisbane Bears and has played more than 150 league games. The Tatiara football season gets underway on April the 21st. Pennant bowls will resume in the weekend in the Lower South East Bowling Association after a lengthy Christmas break. With 3 rounds to be played before the finals, the competition for a chance to play in the Division 1 finals is extremely even. 7 teams are separated by only 2 wins. The women's champion of champions is Claire Ford from the Mount Gambier Bowling Club. She took the title at Beachport when she defeated Yvonne Pitt of Lucendale 25 shots to 22 after trailing by 16 points at one stage in the game. The men's champion of champion finals have been postponed until March the 18th. That's all on tonight's sport. Now it's back to Carolyn for a look at tonight's weather in brief.
Thanks, Andrew. Isolated rain and showers were observed along parts of the coast today, with maximum temperatures ranging from 40 degrees at Maree down to 22 degrees at Cape Northumberland and Cape Willoughby. In the southeast, maximums range from 37 degrees at Naracoorte to 22 degrees at Cape Northumberland, and in Victoria, Casterton recorded 33 degrees and Hamilton 35 degrees. Tomorrow, the Western District is expected to be warm and cloudy with isolated showers, and the southeast cloudy in parts, with an estimated top of 23 degrees in Mount Gambier, 28 degrees in Keith and 26 degrees in Naracoorte. Melbourne tomorrow should have showers developing, with a maximum of 30 degrees, a minimum of 19 degrees. Adelaide will be fine, with a maximum of 28 degrees, a minimum of 18 degrees. And the fire ban information for the lower southeast, the upper southeast and the Western District for tomorrow will be high. And a reminder that fire restrictions continue to apply right throughout the fire season. And for more information on these restrictions, contact the CFS hotline on 008 188 100. Now just repeating some of tonight's main stories. A major new transport training centre to be operating in the southeast this year. Australian National under fire over the Blue Lake train service. Tatiara businesses move to halt the economic decline of their district, and a Mount Gambier man finds out that you can't trust anyone these days. Well, that's all for news, sport and weather for this evening, so for now, on behalf of the news team, it's good night. Well, that just about wraps up our viewing on Channel 8 this evening, but before you switch off the television and head off to bed, let's preview the programs coming up for your enjoyment.
Murder steps up to bat.
Looks like she surprised a burglar. There was a fight, and she was killed when she hit her head on the table here.
I say hello to a woman, I shake her hand, and she ends up dead.
Jessica's nephew has an opportunity to pitch in the major leagues.
It's my nephew, Johnny Eaton. He's suffering from a terrible feeling of guilt.
I'm booking you on suspicion of murder.
Murder, She Wrote, starring Angela Lansbury, Thursday, 7:30 on Channel 8. Da Nang, Vietnam, 1967.
3 minutes, 38 seconds.
Prison's not a bad idea. Where else can you get such a large captive audience? Except Vietnam.
A life of trauma and personal relationships.
I used to talk
When was that?
a long time ago.
One more word out of you, and I'm going to tear your head off and stuff it down your neck.
Somebody forgot to clean up the checkout counter. Get the dead man out of here.
perspective of war is shared by 3 women.
They said they weren't sure. They said they didn't seem to be able to locate him. How's that possible? You didn't find him, did you?
No.
You didn't even try.
He's missing in action. Probably dead.
Don't miss the premiere of China Beach, 9:30 Thursday on Channel 8.
Come on, come on. Come on, come on. Come on, come on. Come on, come on. Come on, come on, come on. Come on, Ozzy. Come on, come on, come on, Ozzy. Come on, come on, come on, Ozzy, come on.
Just some of the many excellent programs coming up on Channel 8. But for now, on behalf of the staff of Channel 8, it's a very good night.
Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our sins, as we forgive those who sin against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For yours is the kingdom, the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
As Channel 8 closes, we remind you that Lifeline continues 24 hours a day.